Howdy. This is Mission Texas.
A political podcast about winning Texas by 2032, or else we may lose the White House for a generation.
I'm one of your hosts, Alex Clark.
And I am Kate Rumsey.
Other podcasts may focus on the day-to-day or the next election, but we are keeping the eyes of Texas on the bigger prize. What happens after the next census?
Hi, and welcome back to another exciting episode of Mission Texas. Here today with us is Joe Jaworski, candidate for Attorney General. Again, a University of Texas School of Law graduate like myself. He is the former mayor of Galveston. He is a longtime Democratic Party activist and fundraiser, and we're just so grateful to have him here with us. Welcome.
Thank you, Alex and Kate. Really pleased to be on your legendary show. I mean it.
Wow, legendary. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
We're trying.
Well, I have to just start here because I'm really into origin stories as a big nerd, Marvel comics and the like. I like to know where people come from and what got them to where they're at. But I feel like for you, I have to go even further back than your origin story because you have for people like us, for attorneys, you have such a famous last name here in Texas. I actually had a summer clerkship at Norton Rose Fulbright, but no one in Texas calls it Norton Rose Fulbright. They call it Fulbright because they know Fulbright and Jaworski.
Mm-hmm.
So can you tell us a little bit about your family? For those of us listeners who are not lawyers already plugged into who Leon Jaworski was, can you tell us first about him?
Oh, Alex, thank you for that. Yeah, no, we're immigrants. The Jaworski family came to America in 1902. And Joseph Jaworski, who I am named after, was studying for the Catholic priesthood in Poland, but near Krakow, and became of the opinion that the Pope was less than honorable, and he spoke out against that. He was chased off from the Catholic Church. The bishop had his best interests at heart and said, "You need to leave now." And so he went to Germany and became a Lutheran minister, and had two children with his beautiful wife, Maria, who was a lady in waiting to the Austrian queen. And they then got on a steamer from Bremen and went to Baltimore in 1902 with two of their children, Joseph and Hannibal. They then moved to near Seguin, Texas, where Joseph became the minister at Frieden's Church. He's buried there in what used to be Geronimo, Texas, but is now Seguin. And he and Maria had Leon Jaworski, their third child, and Maria, their fourth. They spoke German as children in the household. Leon, as we know now, would go on to be the youngest attorney ever licensed by the State Bar of Texas. He literally had to advocate before the Texas Supreme Court to have his disability removed, which was his minority, his age. And they granted it because they were so impressed with his oratory. His brother Hannibal was a noted surgeon who was educated at Baylor Medical School, just like Leon was at Baylor Law School. So we've always had a close connection with the Baylor family. Well, my father was born in the 30s. He became a lawyer. I was born in 1962, and I'm a lawyer, third generation Texas lawyer. So thank you for letting me speak briefly about Leon's background. A very humble beginning, dirt floors, following his father in horse-drawn carriages throughout the hill country, where he would be paid to minister to various churches. And so it is an immigrant story. And anytime the outrage about what immigration means to Texas, I always like to start with that. It wasn't that long ago, my family came over on a boat, and it takes a generation or two, and you are immediately accepted. Well, let's go back to the original generation, and let's remember what made America great. So I like to tell that story, and we are a nation of immigrants, and my family's no exception.
You know, it's so interesting because I think a lot of Texans are coming here for the same reasons your family came here. And like my grandfather from Chicago came to Dallas area to find a better life. And then on my dad's side, I'm an eighth generation Texan, and I have a ancestor who came here was Stephen F. Austin with the old 300. So what is the common denominator with everybody is that we have a lot of people coming here who might not otherwise have any connection to each other, but are trying to find opportunity. And I think your, just from my opinion, is a very incredible story. But let's get to you. I mean, you just said you were a lawyer. So you went to law school, hook 'em horns. Both my brothers went there. So yay. What happened next? Like, how'd you get into the legal profession?
Well, it was detoured. So let me start by saying when I was 6 years old, I saw my first drum set, and
Yes.
I was impressed with that. So I have been a drummer my whole life. I've played in a number of bands, and so the way I want to tell this story is I did the right thing as a kid, from a family who appreciated education. I made it through high school, went to college, and was accepted to law school. It was all working out, Kate. And I happened to see REM play before anyone knew who they were at my college bar in Davidson, North Carolina in 1983 before their first album came out. And I said, yeah, that's what I'm going to do. And so instead of going to law school, I called the dean and I told him, hey, Dean, I'd like to take a year off. Well, that year became 4 years. And so I played and managed a recording and touring band out of Chapel Hill, North Carolina called Other Bright Colors. And, we were rescued from anonymity some years ago when our 2 albums were put on Apple iTunes and Spotify. So you can check Other Bright Colors out. You might come to the opinion that, Joe, you made the right call going to law school. But, whatever your opinion is on the music, it was definitely of its time. But yeah, you're right, Kate. I went to law school in '88, a few years later than planned. But I met my wife within 3 weeks, and we were engaged at the end of our first year, married at our second year, and we graduated University of Texas Law School together as husband and wife. And we've been married 35 years. Got into maritime law. I had a fabulous clerkship with an Eisenhower appointed federal judge by the name of John R. Brown. He was the chief judge of the United States Court of Appeals for the Fifth Circuit. By the time I worked for him, he was 81 years old and was clearly senior status, but just a legend. And so he would go ride the circuit is what they talked about. So I actually had an opportunity to sit, at the feet of a great jurist, Stephen Breyer, when he was on the First Circuit and before he ascended to the Supreme Court, and got to write opinions on that panel with my colleagues. And they were all from Boston, and I love Boston. So did maritime law for 6 years, then went to plaintiff's law and had a great period with the Busby law firm, where I handled a pretty significant caseload and learned a lot about doing hard work fast and a lot at the same time. Then I started my own law firm, the Jaworski law firm, in 2007. And then by 2012, I became a full-time mediator, and it has been off to the races ever since.
I was just going to say, we actually share the federal clerkship experience, the 3 of us.
Yeah.
I think it's
my judge was a Clinton appointee, and she just retired. So
that's fabulous.
Mine was a George W. Bush appointee and retired a little bit before hers.
Well, and the beauty of it is even though a lot of people make partisan comment about the federal judiciary, the framers and the founders had it right when they decided to depoliticize the federal judiciary. Now, whether people want to have a talk about, age limits and all that, that's for another conversation. But I do love those great stories where, people like appoint someone like David Souter, and then they're like, oh, he's exercising his own discretion.
Exactly.
That's like one of those little mystery, like what's behind curtain 3, and so I do appreciate the federal judiciary. We have that right now. A Trump appointee, Jeff Brown in the Southern District of Texas, Galveston division, and he's come out with 2 major redistricting opinions, one of which I was a witness in, discussing my experience as mayor of Galveston on the question of coalitions. And he is a very thoughtful jurist. And, people want to say all Trump judges are, incredible and beyond the pale. Not true.
Well, yeah, I mean, not to be controversial for controversy's sake, but I've said this for a long time and will continue to, is that I think that we shouldn't be electing judges And for the same reasons, I think the federal judiciary works well. I think we ought to have some sort of system that is akin to it, because at the very least, you have more skin in the game by people who are getting more attention. I think judges are so far down on the ballot that they're honestly just not registering on a lot of voters' minds. At least if a governor or a county judge, perhaps, is the person making the appointment, and then it has to go through some sort of confirmation process with the commissioners or the Texas Senate or whatever. I think there are other politically ambitious people who want to do the homework and find something wrong with this person and make a lot of hay at it. So there's a lot of pressure on whoever's doing the appointing to make sure quality people are making it there.
Well, exactly. And it's interesting you should say that because, former Attorney General John Hill, from when, I was young, he was a big advocate in later years for appointing jurists in Texas. What's interesting is the way Greg Abbott and the Republican machine that has been in charge for the last 30 years have handled matters is there is essentially an appointment process that has somewhat overridden our usual elections. I mean, there still have to be elections, but you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
There's a musical chairs, if you will, where Abbott finds an opening somewhere on a higher court, and then he elevates that person from the district court, or if it's to the Supreme Court, from the intermediate court of appeals, and then appoints one of the, favored attorneys, whoever, whether it's from funding or ideology. And so there has been an appointment process. And of course, then what's better than that? Let's create a whole 15th Court of Appeals and a business court system and all them too, but in 2020,
like the federal system, there's no advice and consent from the Senate. It's just he gets to plug them in, right?
Correct.
Yeah,
you are correct. And again, to tie something back, that is exactly a perfect comeback, Alex, because the advise and consent power, constitutional as it is so important. May I remind people of the Edward Kennedy involvement with Robert Bork, which takes us back to Watergate, which takes us back to my grandfather. Bork was the one who happily fired Archibald Cox when no one else would do it. And then, that was in 1973. And of course, when it was his time to be nominated by Ronald Reagan, Edward Kennedy was like, oh, yeah, let me ask a few questions. Great stuff. Great stuff.
Your background and your family is just so steeped in our history. I love it. So, I mean, can we get back to maybe your political origins, going back to our fun Marvel origin analogy? How did you get into politics? Like, why did you do it? I know a lot of us are crazy, right? Like they're like, why would you want to do this?
Okay. So, it's silly to begin this way, but I'm going to tell you anyway. I mean, I was into student politics. I mean, I ran for student council in my high school. I served as student council president. Okay, big deal. I did not do that in college, but I loved it, And then when I was at law school, I thought, well, I'll run for the student advisory committee or whatever. And my dear friend Barrett Reasoner beat me. Okay, so that's fine. I gave that up, and I got into mock trial and moot court because I was a solid B student. My wife was an A student. I mean, she literally would not go to class, use my notes, and then get a better grade on the test. It's so unfair, but my calling card when I was trying to get jobs was moot court, mock trial. So I had no ambition to run for anything in the first, let's say, 10 years of being a lawyer. So, Kate, you ask, how did it all begin? I'll tell you, it was my realtor. My wife's and my realtor, David Bowers in Galveston, Texas. He sold us our house in 95. We moved in. I was now a plaintiff's lawyer. We had no money because I didn't know what I was doing. We were literally living on frugal, fumes. And he comes to me, David does, and says, "Hey, I'm term limited for Galveston City Council. I'm going to run for mayor. You ought to run for my seat." And there's a lot of stories like this where you're like, "Man, that'll help me focus. I'll do it." Well, I loved my neighborhood. I'd already been a community organizer. I'd already sued the city for neighborhood issues that we thought we were being treated unfair. So I was already kind of involved in Galveston. So my origin story is that my realtor recommended I run for city council, and I did, and I won, and I have had the public service bug, and I hope you take that in the kindest way because it's meant that way. We have too many people doing this for a job or for their own, uh, buoyancy in society or anything. To me, it is something that ought to hurt a little bit. You ought not to do it. Uh, you ought to do it for all the right reasons, which is to serve people, not serve yourself. And that's been my mantra ever since. And that's what I'm doing running for Attorney General.
Yeah, that's a well said. I mean, servant leadership, yeah, it should cost something. It should not be the best gig you can get, right? Like I get frustrated, not to harp on I'll harp on it just one more time, the whole elected judges thing. Like if being elected as a judge in Texas is the best job that you can get, like for like the money or because you like the prestige of it, you probably shouldn't be in that job.
I agree. And or do it for a little while and make room for someone else. That's a whole nother thing that I think we've talked about sort of impliedly. This, I'm going to make a career out of this. You can't knock me out. Well, that I just want to say right now, I'm a huge fan of term limits. Okay. Uh, I didn't pick it, but I walked into a situation in Galveston that had a 6-year term limit. I served it. Yay for me. I got reelected 3 times and then it was over. And someone else served and they did a fine job. And it's been so long that other people have served and they've done a fine job. It ought to be a collective thing. And no one ought to get too comfortable that they think this is my kingdom and you're going to have to knock me off the mountain, which is, of course, what we're dealing with
Yeah.
in Texas.
Well, and in
too
the
often.
White House,
I know we have a
unfortunately.
governor who won't go away. In Republic, yeah. I mean, well, so I wanted to ask though, like after being mayor of Galveston, you also, I believe it was 4 years ago, right, that you ran for AG. You got to the runoff, which is great. I mean, that was a crowded field, right? So can you speak to that race, especially as you look back on what happened and what it took to do a statewide race back then? Because I imagine running for city council mayor is vastly different than a statewide. Like, how'd you do it?
Yeah. So I remember listening to one of Trump's COVID updates. You remember how he used to get up there with, Dr. Fauci and tell us all how it was. And, we're going to put bleach in our veins or whatever. Well, I think it might have been that press conference where I was like, that's it. I've got to get involved in office again. Now, that was the summer of 2020, roughly. So this would have been 8 years after I left the mayor's office. And my mediation practice was robust. We had just started the Zoom protocol because I was flying 5 days a week to different cities and sometimes out of the country to mediate my niche practice that I do, which is the Defense Base Act, which is injury cases sustained by military contractors injured in the war on terror. And military contractor can be, someone carrying a weapon or someone preparing meals and doing laundry. That's what contractors are. There are hundreds of thousands of them. But the point I want to make here is I got involved, thankfully, because I had a Zoom practice that would allow me to run for office. I know we're going to talk a little bit about how difficult it is to run for the average working human being, which is what we need more of in government. But for me, it was coming back from an 8-year hiatus after being mayor. And I thought, I've always been a lawyer. My grandfather never ran for public office, but he served, as a special counsel, as a Watergate prosecutor. He was even the Senate legal advisor to Lieutenant Governor Hobby, the impeachment trial prior to Ken Paxton's, and put a lot of precedent into the bloodstream of impeachment law in the state of Texas. So I always thought, state government would be something that we could use a Democrat. And finally, let me finish by saying, last I checked in, when I thought about state government was when my wife and I were about to graduate law school, and I happened to be shopping at the Fresh Plus at 43rd and Duval near where we lived during law school. And there was Governor Ann Richards. So, my impression of state government upon becoming a professional was, well, these are sober people who have our best interests at heart. And, they're all Democrats, by the way. And then, now we're pining for the days of George W. Bush as governor. Well, hey, Texas, what happened? So I decided to run for state office because things have fallen so far. Oh, well, Kate, that was 4 years ago. How quaint. Now things are literally on fire. I mean, there's fire everywhere.
I know, especially this week, as I mean, we're recording this after Venezuela, after all these shootings and ICE, and I get so many text messages from people saying, like, I don't know how I can do it anymore. I don't know if I can be in politics. Should I be in politics or should I just get out? And that's my feeling. Like, I'm either all in or I need to be out just to save my mindset. So, but you're all in, right? Like, you're all in on this race. So, but I guess going back to my question, I mean, what are your reflections on the last race? Like, and how are you doing anything differently? Are you doing it the same? Like, do you see it differently? Because this is now a Trump midterm. That wasn't a Trump midterm.
That I was going to start with that. So it was a
Yeah.
Biden midterm, the 22 cycle, versus a Trump midterm. Absolutely different oxygen level. You'll recall, and I started too early, to be fair. Yeah, okay. I just told you my reaction to that last Trump press conference. But you shouldn't start a campaign first off without an announcement. You shouldn't start a campaign that early, but I did. And people hadn't heard from me in a long time, so everyone was so happy to hear from me. They gave me a bunch of money. I spent a lot of it early, and what I'll contrast now is in the 26th cycle. My ears perked up when Paxton got impeached in 23, and there was a slight chance, that he would be convicted, and then there'd be a snap election. As you know, the election code would allow for such if his absence were made real by a conviction, but it didn't happen that way. So I kind of went back into slumber. And then in the summer of 25, July, here's the difference. We had a wonderful website to start with, an actual campaign launch video, which I will ask people to go see at jaworski4texas.com, that details one of the many maritime injury death cases that I handled as an example of the level of care I would bring to the state and all 32 million of us as Attorney General. We did a launch interview with Progress Texas. All the issues that you see on the landing page of my website are actual sort of reformatting of my notes for that interview with Chris Mosser, one of our colleagues. I think back in 22, Dobbs was a decision that was leaked and then published, and that played to my colleague Rochelle Garza's strengths, and I was an afterthought. This time, there are 3 of us rather than 5. I am clearly the progressive choice in this race, and I am letting everybody know about it. And I think that meets the moment, because this is no time for discussing a record reaching across the barbed wire to shake hands with MAGA. That is not what's on order. We need to defeat them all in as big a numbers as possible. And then when Democrats are restored to a sober leadership role in the state of Texas, like they were when I graduated law school, they can compromise with us.
They can compromise with us. Amen.
I'm curious, before we move away from your background, it's interesting to see what each of the candidates brings. Y'all all have really interesting lives, just professionally. As a mayor, you were the executive of a town. I understand the Attorney General's office is kind of like its own independent executive office. Are there parallels between a mayor's office and Attorney General's office, and how so? Because they're not, strictly speaking, the same kind of work, right? Like, one is running a city, one is like chief top law enforcement.
Right. And here's how I prioritize my experience as mayor as helpful in making a decision to support me for Attorney General. First off, in Galveston, we have a city manager form of government, not like Houston, where the mayor is the executive of everything. In fact, Galveston was the first to come up with the city manager paradigm. But on the sole question that really defined my 2-year term as mayor, which was public housing and the rebuilding of public housing with disaster funds from Housing and Urban Development, the Texas Government Code appoints the mayor as the sole decider and decision maker on how to staff a housing authority. And when HUD, in this rare occasion, gave $1 billion to the city of Galveston to rebuild, HUD communicates with the highest elected official, not the appointed city manager. And that is in their rules and protocol. So the leader of HUD, Sean Donovan, would appoint executive vice leaders who would contact me regularly on progress. And so that's one thing I'd like to say. Attorney General is fascinating because it is, as you say, Alex, an independent executive officer. It's a lawyer, to be sure, but when the 1876 Texas Constitution was written, this was not long after Reconstruction. And so there was this desire to disperse power in what we would call the executive branch of government so that nobody could tell Texas what to do again. And of course, Greg Abbott is abusing that. But the beauty of it is the Texas Attorney General does not answer to the governor, doesn't answer to Dan Patrick either. It is an independent executive authority for 32 million Texans. And it has been abused in so many ways that we don't have time to discuss it. But the greatest abuse is that Ken Paxton has turned it into a persecutor for the Republican Party of Texas. And that's why people should vote for a Democrat. And of course, they should vote for Joe Jaworski to be that Democrat. And we will change the Office of Attorney General to what it should be, which is an attorney for the whole state of Texas.
Everybody, talking about the executive as an AG, I'm imagining it's a lot of law enforcement, but there is within the AG's office, they do a lot with Medicaid. I understand they do a lot with child custody arrangements, and CPS, I imagine, is involved. So how do you see the role as AG as it fits within the life of a Texan? How do you represent Texans and how do you improve their life through that office?
Okay, thank you for that question. I have reimagined what the Office of Attorney General can do for Texas. First off, it is, I think, the largest executive agency, over 4,000 staff employees. It has 800 or so lawyers, largest law firm in the state of Texas. It has over $1 billion budget each biennium. So you have lots of resources. Yes, there are statutory things you say, and you're correct. Child support, you're in charge of Medicaid fraud. Why can't there be new divisions when a new person, a Democrat this time, leads the office? I would tell you that the number one thing that government should do, and I'm referring back to Bobby Kennedy, the night Martin Luther King Jr. was killed. He spoke in Indianapolis and he said, let us dedicate ourselves to the proposition that government should tame the savageness of man and make gentle the life of this world. Well, that's the exact opposite of what the Office of Attorney General has done. My friend Amber and Adam Briggle had Ken Paxton over at their home for a meal, and he later became their persecutor because their child is trans. And they've been very much out on the record about that. Ken Paxton has used that office like the Spanish Inquisition used the church. And so I would tell you there ought to be instead a division of affordability. Let me say that again. I propose that there should be a division of affordability, and that will be one transformative division within the Office of Attorney General that's never existed before. And what that will do is focus on ways to put money in Texans' pockets, because that's what we need in this beloved capitalist society. And it will do everything from collect child support on time and get it to the conservator parent on time. It will challenge electrical transmission companies at the PUC. Why doesn't the Attorney General stand up for ratepayers? It's always devolved down to local attorneys. It will go after payday loan sharks and people charging usurious rates for student loans. It will help ratepayers. It'll help insurance premium payers get the benefit of their bargain. And on and on and on, a division of affordability. It would also liaise with the attorneys who will no doubt in the Office of Attorney General sue the governor if we have to, or if a Democrat serves as government, we won't have to reverse vouchers. We all know that
Please.
defunding public education is
Yeah.
the exact opposite direction we ought to take.
Right.
So the attorney general should be a leader on all these issues as a lawyer for sure. But because there are so many satellite offices, Kate, throughout the state for child support collection, you could offer wraparound services to tame the savageness and make gentle the life of this world. So there's nothing wrong with government. Government in good doses is actually a wonderful antidote for how difficult it is to make it here in this country.
Absolutely.
This I feel is connected to the newly proposed division of affordability. I saw just a few days ago a news story about the $156 million Texas is paying Norton Rose Fulbright for obtaining. Well, to be fair to them, they obtained a $1.375 billion settlement with Google. So maybe the juice was worth a squeeze, maybe it wasn't. But you tell me, what do you think about all that?
Well, I put a TikTok out about this the other day. Hey,
Oh, did you?
applaud Norton Rose Fulbright. I'm sure they earned it. They have a contract with Ken Paxton that entitles them to that. I'm not going to say one bad word about the successor to my grandfather's
That's right.
firm. But let's talk about how that came about, and let's see if we can avoid doing this again. In fact, kudos to the Texas Tribune for their article in 2021, Alex, that warned the Google settlement will cost taxpayers millions. Little did they know it was 156 million, because in 2020 there was competent in-house counsel at the OAG on salary that was going to land a remarkable settlement with Google. Darren McClarty and Jeff Mateer. They were part of the
All right.
whistleblower
Yeah.
crew, and people forgot their names because they never sued, but they were definitely chased off by the notorious conduct of Ken Paxton. And so Paxton has been doing this left and right. He exercises sole authority to allow cities and counties to hire local counsel, outside counsel, but he makes no mistake about doing it for himself. And so I would like to do an investigation on what he got out of it. But there's no question it was a great settlement. We could have saved 156 million. And I would like to think that conservative and liberal voters can all get behind the idea that that's 156 million we could have put toward public education.
Yeah, and how many millions has he wasted in lawsuits that have gone nowhere? Right, meritless lawsuits that he's brought.
Yeah, no, he is the guru of vexatious litigation in Texas.
So I wanted to turn though, your opponent, should you win in the primary, will not be Ken Paxton. So like do you have any guesses? Like, do you have any ideas on what the general would look like for the Republicans?
I do. There's 4 Republicans running. Yeah, so I do have some opinions, and I'm putting on my mediator's informed speculation hat. I think of the 4 who are running now, there's clearly going to be a runoff. There's no way one of these 4 gets 50% plus 1 on March 3rd. So who's going to be in the runoff? Well, I'll take a stab at it. I think it's going to be MAGA Mays Middleton, and I'm calling him by his proper name because I think he's actually changed his name to MAGA Mays Middleton. His actual name is David Mays Middleton III, but he's changed it. And Chip Roy, and it's going to be a 75-day bloodbath where they're going to ruin each other's pelts, and whoever emerges on June 1st, I hope to be waiting for them.
You don't think our fellow UT law grad Aaron Wrights is going to make it to the runoff,
No, I don't. But
despite being personally endorsed by Ken Paxton?
Yeah. No, I mean, that only goes so far. But I mean, I've met Aaron, nice guy. I appreciate his service. I mediate for his colleagues all the time, former Marines who have gone into the private military contractor field. Got to meet Aaron at Texas Tribune, and he likes to troll me on X. And, I let him do that. There's no point in responding, but, I look forward to getting to know him better.
Yeah, I think he's got a wonderful family, Aaron Wrights. I like him personally. I don't know if he likes me now that he knows how democratic I am. I'm a little concerned with the tone of his rhetoric. He says things like political violence is purely a left wing problem. He says the Democrats are like Stephen Miller says, like we're like a domestic extremist organization or something like that. Like I get really concerned about people who talk like this. I think it puts people like us in danger, and it puts our families and our kids and people we love into real harm potentially.
Yeah, I mean, when was the first time you looked up the word stochastic? I mean, I remember like, what does that mean? And then I looked at it and was like, damn. But it is troubling because I'm sure he wasn't talking like that, 4 years ago, or he didn't talk like that in high school. So what's his origin story? I'm confident that there is a greater risk of being shot in running for office these days. Um, and that's a horrible thing to say, but I'm not a fool, nor am I naive, but people need to tone it down. Uh, all my comments, you know, if I get revved up, it's all about the possibilities of winning a race. And it's all within the construct of a civil election. I'm not talking about hurting people or punishing people. I'm talking about a fair, um, you know, ballot box resolution. And to me, the more the merrier. This whole canard that, you know, all these non-citizens and evildoers are, stuff in the ballot box. People need to stop talking like that. But that's where it started. And it seemed so innocent then. Now, um, there's actual calls for violence. And it's almost like the video games that people were playing 20 years ago have sort of sunk into their consciousness. And now we're going to use real guns. We can't talk like that. That is the most irresponsible thing. And so, I'd like to know Aaron on a much more civil terrain.
Hmm. Well, talking about the realities of office, you alluded to this earlier. I'm wondering, how do we elect more working class people? Because it seems to me, in order to campaign statewide, especially, and even I saw this in my state race, which is just my own area, like you have to be available a lot for a campaign, and that just does not seem compatible to me with somebody who is also working. And you also have to be available. And I applaud you, Joe. I've seen you and other people like Vicky Goodwin who have been around the state, going to all the groups and seeing people, and you're being present. You're, as they would say, like you're there, right? Like you're there for them, and you've attended their events, and people remember that, especially at all the different events. Like, so I'm just wondering, how do we do it as a working class person? Because it seems to me either you have to be independently wealthy, you have to have no job, or you have someone supporting you. I don't know.
Is it mediation? Is that the trick? Is that
Yeah,
you
well,
can
this is why I can run now, and I wouldn't do it if I had to be in the office every day. There's just no way. I don't have that kind of money saved. But because I mediate by Zoom and with the occasional trip in person, I'm able to be at a hotel in Gun Barrel City, Texas, or Eagle Pass, Texas, or Abilene. All true. This is all where we've been, or Laredo, or McAllen, or Houston, Dallas, Austin, San Antonio. Mediate in the morning, finished by 2 p.m., and then campaign the rest of the day and night. Many times this has me driving home in the middle of the night, like I did yesterday from Round Rock, Texas, getting home at midnight. But it's sustainable. Okay. To answer your question, let's celebrate Taylor Remett, right, up in North DFW, who is a union member who is on the precipice of winning a state Senate seat.
union member and veteran, I'll add.
And veteran, God
I
bless.
love it.
And so, but the honest answer to your question is, if you're a working person, you should be able to run for city council. Um, uh, you ought to be able even to run for county commissioner. Um, uh, if you want to do state representative, you ought to be able to do that too, with some understanding from your employer. But once you start getting into these congressional and statewide races, obviously, to be able to campaign, you're going to have to make some compromises. And sometimes there's that perfect little situation like mine or like some other. But we need Democrats to win this 26th cycle and then reset the paradigm. And what my division of Ethics and Integrity, which, by the way, has the ominous acronym of DEI, will do,
Spooky.
and I'm proud of that, by the way. You see what I did there. The Division of Ethics and Integrity will investigate and cooperate with local prosecutorial authorities to indict, try, and convict people who are helping themselves illegally at the public trough. That's my promise. The other thing it will do is advocate for a sea change in how government works. We need to have independent redistricting commissions. We need to have campaign finance limits like so many other states do, and I mean real limits. We don't
have them in Texas.
We don't.
That's the problem.
Not at all.
We have no limits.
And so the next time someone asks me, how much money did you raise? I'm going to say, don't you really mean, how am I going to spend it? You remember that great scene in Apollo 13 where they're dying on their own, carbon dioxide up in the capsule. And they say, guys, this is what they've got to work with. Make a fix. And I think candidates ought to be given a certain amount of money or limited to a certain amount of money and say, persuade us, as opposed to, I'm Tim Dunn. I'm going to get my boy Paxton off. And then I'm going to give a whole bunch of money to a whole bunch of other people so that I can have my ideology in the Capitol to the exclusion of the working man and woman. And so there ought to be term limits as well. All it takes is a constitutional change. And so finally, I'm going to also advocate for citizen petition initiatives, which are not permitted in our Constitution. Yeah, you get some crazy propositions too, but you got to get a bunch of signatures. We ought to have already handled the abortion question by a citizen petition initiative that allows us to vote on it. Right now, we're just required, we're at the mercy of, 2/3 or 3/4 of each chamber. And that's just never going to happen with these Republicans in charge.
Yeah. Well, I when I was campaigning, I didn't realize that our Constitution here in the state of Texas defines marriage between a man and a woman. And so if our Obergefell fell, with the Supreme Court, then we divert back to that. And, how important that would be. And last fall, how many constitutional amendments did we just vote on? I mean, on these mundane issues, and they all passed. I don't know how, but they all passed. I don't know. Everyone just says, yes, that sounds great.
Yeah. Well, we genuflect.
Yeah. So we think this is a great opportunity in 2026 to have a big sea change, a great year for Texas Democrats. But if you listen to this podcast, you probably also know we care a lot more about what happens in 2030 than what happens in 2026. No offense. Let's say you win, you become the next attorney general. How do we take the time we have between now and then to get Texas in a better position going into that moment? Because to me, that's where everything's headed to a point. And if we don't have the Texas legislature flipped, we're not going to be a part of the redistricting fight that's going to deal with these 5 new congressional districts we're supposed to be getting because of all this population growth. How can we most use these next few years to make sure we're ready for that big cataclysmic moment in 2030, but also that first time we have a presidential election in 2032 with those redistributed electoral votes?
You're so right to focus on the end of the decennial census. So here's what I'm going to do if elected attorney general. Number one, I'm going to keep the same pace, and I will be out on campuses regularly. I mean, monthly. I'm not talking about once or twice a year. I'm talking about every month. High school, college, university, and law schools. And if invited, I'll go to medical schools. But my point is, where people are studying the Constitution, where people are engaging civically in an education environment, I want them to see the Democratic Attorney General as an antidote to the anti-education hate mantra that the Republican Party has spread across our state. When I'm Texas Attorney General, I will protect educators at every level. And so what that's going to do is to create an interest level on the campuses, because I think young voters are the answer. The second thing I'm going to do, and this is, I take great delight in informing people this, since 1985, there has been a law on the books in the Texas Election Code that's simply not enforced, and no one is enforcing it. I mean, a lot of people follow. Yeah. That's 13.046D as in David. And what it says is every high school principal
That's the one.
is mandated, shall offer registration twice a year to the senior class. The idea being that when you graduate at age 18, you'll be registered. Anecdotally, maybe 35% of high school principals really do this in the spirit of the law. I will send a letter within 2 weeks of taking the oath of office in January 2027 to every high school principal, public, private, charter, religious. The law covers them all. And it'll be a nice but firm letter. Hey, principal, congratulations on starting the spring semester. Please let us know, within 10 business days, the date and time and location of your registration process for the entire senior class. We may come and attend. And we'll make sure that we have 100% compliance. Public school system alone, Alex, graduates over 400,000 seniors every May. And that's just the public schools. So in a 4-year AG term, we're talking well over 1.2 million new registered voters. And you have to do selective service. We all know this. In 1980, the first year it happened. How do we let these seniors graduate without being registered? So that's a pledge.
I love that. I didn't even realize that. But I guess Alex, as a former teacher, knew more about that.
Well, as a former teacher, and then I had interned for the Texas Civil Rights Project when I was in law school and in the voting rights division, and that was one of the things we talked about. Actually,
y'all published a paper on that. I've used that.
The opposite is actually happening in the Texas Attorney General's office right now, where they are going after schools and school boards for encouraging participation.
Yeah, that's illegal.
Oh yeah. We were taking a good hard look at that and what we could do whenever I was an intern there.
Well, can we get to maybe positivity here? This
Yes.
is where we'd like to ask you, we're going to go around the horn. It's a new segment that we've been doing, which is the good news. What do you got, Joe? Because maybe we need a little bit of hope, a little bit good, even if it's, personal, professional, political. Like, what do you got?
Yeah.
Okay, good news. Well, my family is doing fabulously. And, our kids have now exited that troubled teens year. Our son he is 26. He just graduated. I hope I'm doing this right. University of Houston Law Center.
Yeah.
He'll be taking the bar exam. Yeah. He'll be taking the bar exam in February. And our daughter, Sasha, is transferring to the University of Houston. So now we're this big UH family. My wife and I are going to celebrate 36 years of marriage this May.
Congrats.
And I absolutely love my daughter's black Labrador, Mahali. And it is the sweetest dog. And I've done a few TikToks and with this dog. And when I go for walks with the dog, everybody just admiringly looks at us. So I just love my daughter's beautiful black lab, 2-year-old pup. And she's like 60 pounds now. The law practice is booming. I'm helping people settle their claims every single day. So when you see me out on the campaign trail, I'm a working man too.
That's really great. We'll put a plug in for your TikToks. I really like them. And you're out your courtyard. So I see you out there and I love it. Alex, what's your... Yeah, in the courtyard, reporting from the courtyard. Alex, what's your good news?
Yeah, my good news right now, break a little news. Maybe not everybody even knows in the family. So y'all are hearing it first, maybe. My wife is returning back to the workforce.
Wow.
So she and I were both Teach for America in San Antonio. We actually had overlap with James Tallarico. He started the year before us. And sometimes Teach for America gets lambasted. They call us Teach for a While sometimes, TFA. But my wife taught 9 years. My wife got her master's in teaching. After 3 years at her placement school, she taught 5 years at the Texas School for the Visually Impaired and Blind there in Austin. And then she taught a year up at Richardson ISD when we moved here. And so I'm very excited to say that she is rejoining the world of education. She is going to be at the Children's Center, a historic preschool here in Dallas, which I am on the board of. And so we're very big fans of the Children's Center. And I'm very proud of her for rejoining the world of education.
Fabulous. Well done.
Yeah, because y'all have 2 young children. So yeah. I think that's really amazing to be able to do that.
Yeah, my son will start there in the fall. And then my toddler will also be there. So they'll be there together.
That's fabulous.
That's great. Well, mine's not family related, but my family's doing great as well. I have a 3.5-year-old and an 8-year-old stepson. But I just finished. I've been trying to read more in the new year, and also have been trying to finish books. Like I'll start a book, and then I will just turn to another one. And I did a lot of romance fantasy this last year. Maybe our female audience listeners, and maybe some of our male listeners. But I started Kamala Harris's book, 107 Days, and I finally finished it over the holidays and the new year. And did you guys read that book? Either of
I've
you?
not.
Not
No.
yet.
No, it was really good. I mean, it was basically a diary of everything that happened every day. And it was really incredible just to hear like her interviewing people for the VP race, and then like what happened with Joe Rogan, talking about podcasts, and then her being really honest about her relationship with Joe Biden. And so it was a really great, I mean, a different telling. Like I thought the diary entry type of style was very compelling, and where it's leading. Like, and obviously like we don't like it, but I thought it was a really great behind the scenes look of what she was going through, and like her debate prep and how amazing that was, and how she had somebody opposite her who she in preparation who embodied Trump, and how she like hated him until the end. So that's my good news. I finished that book. Now I'm reading Lawrence Wright's God Save Texas. I don't know if either of you read that one, but it's essentially about just like what does Texas embody, and there's a chapter in it about politics. So, and I think there was like an HBO special about God Save Texas, kind of based on his book. So I highly recommend that. And so I'm kind of trying to finish that one. So that's my good news. All right, so that's our good news segment. I guess we're going to finish though, Joe. You're now in the hot seat about the last word. We're going to give every one of our guests this. How are we going to flip Texas? We haven't really talked about that yet, but how broadly, not just your race, because the AG's race, in addition to governor, seems to have gotten the closest in our recent memory in the last decade. So what are we going to do? How are we going to do it?
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think that what we have to do is be the bravest we've ever been and ridicule the idea that the Republicans can safely deliver the goods. We need to point out the hate and the MAGA and the separation. And we talked a little bit about it, about some of the AG Republican candidates. We need to hold them accountable, much like Congress held Trump accountable for the January 6th investigation. You remember that was, some people criticized it, but it was almost like a rise and fall of the Third Reich, episode where it was step by step. So we need to remind people what has been said. The second thing is we need to run as a ticket as opposed to several vanity projects. We haven't brought his name up, but someone who's had a great impact, whether you know it or not, on our chances is Kendall Scudder, our new chairman.
And our first guest.
As he should be. He was a guest on my radio show. And when I met him years ago when I was running in the 22 cycle. But when I really connected with him where I thought this is the future, was when I moderated the next to last live state chair forum. And it was at Lady of the Lakes in San Antonio. And he just stood out. I mean, there were so many good candidates, but I thought Kendall's got this, and sure enough. So I believe Kendall's robust, unapologetic, swing for the fences attitude rings true to my ears. And I'm going to suggest that if I'm blessed with, the primary voters' confidence, and I'm one of the nominees, I'm going to suggest that we campaign together, we travel together, we pool our resources, Kate. And so I hope that's something specific, not just, bon on me or whatever, where I'm just talking about all this good feel stuff. I'm talking about sharing our expenses and running ads where we are together. Because I think there's going to be a portion of the electorate that will rise to that. And also, I want them to see us as human beings who can actually deliver the goods. I think it's just been so long since Democrats have run this state that there's a bunch of people, they don't even know what they're talking about. Like, they don't even know how to play baseball. You can't let them be in the starting lineup. Not true. This state of Texas is all made up, ideally, of public servants. So what I would say is be prepared to ridicule the Republicans to their face when they go after Muslims, trans, men and women, and immigrants. That's all they got, guys.
Yeah.
That's what they're going to lead with anyway. And there's going to be a lot of fear distributed, and we need to shout them down. I forget the man's name, but he's not lost to history. The senator who shut down Joe McCarthy. After long last, sir, have you no name?
Yeah.
We need to have that moment here in Texas, and we need to run as a ticket and be seen all around the state.
Well, yeah, every ad I would get from my local congresswoman was like, immigrants are the boogeyman. I mean, they've boogeyman-ified everything. I mean, I feel like that's a verb or something that we should apply to the Democrats. But thank you so much, Joe. We really appreciate you. I mean, if there's anything else you want to add, but please let us know how we can follow and support you. You mentioned your website, but what else can we do? And TikTok, in the courtyard, what else can we do to support you? Anything else?
Yeah, I think relational campaigning is free and easy. So let's start by going to the website, Jaworski4Texas.com. And that's all spelled out, Fortexas. And if you can get my last name spelled, good for you. Jaworski for Texas. And you'll see there a very well-developed website. It's got all my issues. It's got, a campaign launch video that you can share with people on YouTube. And it's got an icon for every single social media platform where I write my own content. So what I'd ask people to do is, check it out and send it to 3 friends and just go, hey, it's Jaworski guy. Check his stuff out. He's running for attorney general. We need connectivity. The other thing is email me. There's a way to, comment on there. And if you feel like giving some money, I'll put it to buying signs. Yep. We have now cashed out our entire account, and because that's what the money is for, and we have 4x8 signs that are going to be popping up all over the state. It's great. And we're going to have some real fun in this primary. It's a competitive primary, and I'm competing.
Yep. Well, we know there's a debate coming up with Richardson area Dems, who we just were with on a Venezuela project. So we wish you luck on that. And I'm going to sign off, and I'll tell our listeners that we'll see them next week. And God bless Texas.
You can follow us on all socials at Mission Texas Podcast. Email us at missiontexaspodcast@gmail.com. This episode is edited by Juan Jose Flores. Our music bumper is by Adam Pickerel, and our cover art is by Tina Sohn.